Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the WealthTech Insider. My name is Danni Grande, and I'm joined by Peter Warren. And today we are really excited to talk to you about our predictions. What the Finura team like to do is sort of get excited about the next 12 months and what that might hold for wealth technology. But what we're going to do first is go back through our 2023 predictions. We're going to see what we got right, what we got partially right, and what we got completely wrong. And just a reminder here, our predictions focus on that intersection between broad technology trends, global tech players, and advisor and also licensee needs. So we're going to do a two-part podcast here. First one's going to be our 2023 predictions and a recap on that. And then our next podcast, part two, will be looking at what we think is going to happen in this space in 2024. Hey, Pete, how's it going?
Hey, Danny. Good to be with you. Can't believe we're end of January already.
Crazy.
2024.
Nearly.
It's
Wow.
1/12 of the year already gone.
Right.
Um, but anyway, good to be back in the podcasting groove. And yeah, I feel like the year's really picked up where we left off from last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. All right. So what we're going to do is go back. We had our predictions last year. So we're going to recap each of those predictions and have a little chat about those. And I'm going to give us a little tick or a cross or a part tick, part cross, depending on how we went. So prediction one, we had startups stop a tough year ahead. So just what our thinking was around this was venture funding had plummeted by 35% in 2022, which hit a low in Q4. And with all the sort of ramped up competition for investment, particularly in AI and those clean energy sectors, um,
Yep.
what we thought sort of might happen was those early stage wealth tech firms with insufficient capital might start to sort of struggle a little bit with the survival challenges and rising costs. And also, we sort of thought that the market shakeup might lead to some mergers and shutdowns potentially. So I'm going to give us a tick on this one. What do you think?
Yeah, big tick. And to be honest, not one we have any joy in getting right, to be honest, because it's bloody tough for startups at the moment. I just think the party kind of ended at the end of 2022 for startups in terms of cheap capital. And it was obviously rising interest rates. But as you said, this sort of the unintended consequence of the AI hype was that unless your business was in AI, you weren't getting funded. Like it consumes so much of the capital. As you say, there was just so much competition for those businesses. And really, maybe some of the ideas that look kind of cool in 2021 just weren't on the radar for VC. So, yeah, we saw a lot of that. And I still think we have a lot to play out from what I understand. There's still a lot of businesses that are, you know, running on pretty low cash, I'd imagine. I think anyone that raised in 2020 or 2021 would be on fumes at this point, my gut
Yeah,
feel. Yeah.
yeah. And do you think too, like with wealth tech in Australia, it's obviously really hard, and we know this because we sort of work with some of the vendors as well. And with the shrinking advisor market, that our advisor market isn't large here in Australia. It's really sort of hard, especially when you've got incumbents like Xplan,
Mm.
Advisorlogy, on Morningstar, to really sort of hit the ground and get some traction.
Yeah, everyone underestimates how hard it is in
Mm.
B2B software. And frankly, even players that are at it for a long time with a lot of capital were struggling. So that last year was really highlighted by two pretty significant sort of closures of businesses or fire sales, if you want to call it. So Advice Intelligence, that absolutely came out of nowhere to an extent. They've been going for over 7 years, I think, and raised a lot of money, frankly.
Yeah.
But they put the message out that they were heading towards an voluntary administration and found an acquirer, which is good for them. So the product, and I'm actually really happy that all the team have found new roles with those businesses. So, I mean, ultimately companies can fail and all those things happen, but you want people to end up, okay out of the thing. And that absolutely happened with GBST acquiring Advice Intelligence. And that was sort of on top of what we saw with Creative Mass, which I think was a sort of a slightly different situation because Creative Mass sort of launched in the market with Wealth Connect with a lot of fanfare, Danny,
Yeah.
and a lot of noise and a lot of hype, particularly because of the Salesforce story, which actually made a lot of sense technically.
Um,
But I think even they discovered that trying to build X plan within inside of Salesforce, which is almost what they were trying to do, is bloody difficult, right?
yeah.
Um, And the difference with Creative Maths was they just weren't trying to crack Australia. They were in the US, the UK, Japan, South Africa. I mean, these are really different markets, and advice is so localized. So I just think there was different issues there. But interestingly, both acquired by the same business in GBST. So that was quite
Uh,
interesting, right? So
uh,
2024 will be really fascinating to see how GBST kind of pull this story together of what they're trying to do with it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And like you say, it's good to see that, people have maintained a good home with
Yep.
these companies and have gone to a good
Yeah.
place. So that's really good. And also, I think to your point, we don't like to get this one right. Innovation is really important. We want
Yeah.
to competition in our space,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, it's
I
not a
think
great thing.
I think, uh, I don't know what you think, but I do think it's absolutely made advisors and certainly licensees a lot more wary of
Um,
going on crusades and experiments with startups who maybe don't have the runway, which is a chicken and egg problem, right? Because someone has to be the first client. That's the hard bit, right? So but I think a lot of people have been burned, not so much by
um,
advice intelligence, but look, I can definitely say from the creative maths perspective that a lot of people were burned by that. So I
yeah,
think it's going to take time for people to trust again, which is probably why they're going to be inclined to stick with either tried and true providers who they can rely on, or if they're newer companies, ones that can demonstrate they've got serious balance sheet behind them.
yeah, yeah. Sort of retreating back to a safe place, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
The time
I think
being,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So prediction number two, we said cloud portal use goes mainstream. And what we sort of thought about there was that cybersecurity concerns were really driving that shift to move to having a client portal, especially for things like emailing out advice documents and sharing that really sensitive information that advice businesses really hold. We predicted that portals will see significant growth in that 2023 period, especially in that later half of 2023. And I sort of think, we also do our own research here at Finura, and we did see that in our research that we had quite a large uptake. We have a question around, do you use a client portal to engage with your customers? And
Yeah.
that increase over that 12-month period. So I also think that some of the tech providers are sort of really starting to seriously think about their client portal functionality as well. I think it might have been a bit of a side issue in the
Mm.
past, but they're really paying attention to having a good client portal. We obviously have a strong lead in there with My Prosperity. I think as a
Yeah.
standalone iPortal, it's working really well with integrating with some of those core advice CRMs, which is really cool to see. But they are up in front as well. So I'm going to give this one a big tick as well. What do you think? You agree?
You absolutely nailed this one. I think, and look for those watching the video stream, bit of a slide up there about intended portal use in Australia. So that's gone up a lot from Finura's research. So we have over, and look, it's still got a long way to go, Danny. Our customers only 36% sort of using portals, so that's got a long way to go, right, for the market. And even if you look at My Prosperity's numbers, they've got a long way to grow, I think, personally,
Yeah.
and others. But for every one that's using a portal, at least another one firm wants to use a portal. So that tells me the next 2 years we'll see really accelerated growth worth trying. And the ones that are outliers and just don't want to use a portal, I think they'll just be dragged kicking and screaming, as you say, by the cybersecurity issues which we're all faced with.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting too, isn't it? Because with, client portals, it's that one piece of tech that touches the end customer. So you actually do have to have a strategy around how you're going to, it's a separate strategy really, isn't it? It's still part of your tech stack, but you've got to really think about, okay, are my clients going to be into this? How am I going to get them to change the way that they're receiving information from us? Am I going to give full functionality of this portal to all of my clients or just part of them? So it's
Yeah,
got to be a really well thought out process, I think.
yeah, it's a big decision, isn't it? Because I would imagine, Danny, that once you implement it, it's pretty hard to change it.
Yeah, you
If you
don't
get
want to
all your
take that.
clients, you don't want to be chopping and changing portals. So yeah, I think as you do always with our clients, I think measure twice, cut once when it comes to making a client portal decision.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Prediction number three, digital advice and institutional funding. So, we sort of talked about the growing optimism in the digital advice sector with that expected increase in partnerships between tech providers and product manufacturers, digital advice companies anticipating to experience more competition as well. I think we got this one right. Do you agree?
I think so. I guess the institutional interest was probably more we saw from an equity ownership perspective. I think, there's a lot of product manufacturers, superannuation funds that, anticipate that they'll have to have a digital device offering. And these markets are certainly more progressed in the UK, for example, where a lot will have digital offering. So probably one notable example, like Ignition Advice, who are, been around a long time now, have a lot of UK clients, no one in Australia though, but they have got an institutional backer here in Australia who's not publicly identified, but it's certainly a very large business. So that was a good indication to me that we probably got this one right. I think it'll become more obvious in the future as to what the institutional interest really is in digital advice. And the other interesting point for us was probably looking at businesses like Ativo, who we work with a bit. They have 11,000 consumers that have used their platform now. That's a lot,
Yeah.
So I sort of the model is there. It's just that I think, and the tech's certainly there, but I think what no one's quite got right is the deployment model at scale. So we'll
Mhm.
probably talk about that in 2024 predictions, but I think we got a lot of work to do to work out how we're just going to implement digital advice across the sector. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good call. All right. Prediction number five. Prediction number four. Platform technology arms race grows. So we saw, or we sort of talking about the platform technology sector, seeing that race for growth amongst the leaders, Hub24, NetWealth, Macquarie, as well, and also companies like CFS and Macquarie focusing on revamping their tech offerings,
Yep.
focusing on the back office as well for their users, and their advice businesses. So I'm going to say we got this one right as well.
Yeah, and it's going to keep going. I think so. You can probably already chalk it up as a 2024. But I think what's incredible to me is that you've got billions and billions of dollars of balance sheet tied up. I mean, 7 billion between Hub and NetWealth alone, right? Which is actually
Mm,
more than pretty much the entire sector. So
yeah.
so um, and in those valuations, you've got a lot of expectation for continued growth from investors. They're going to want to see these businesses keep growing, and as the market contracts in terms of advisor numbers, I think platforms are going to look to pull whatever lever they can to firstly get a more monogamous relationship with advisors, so to really, integrate their experience. And the second part is to really improve advisor productivity because if platforms win, if advisors are more productive, platforms win. So I think that's what's driving a lot of this stuff to build advisor loyalty. And I don't know about you, but I mean, it polarizes people. But from my perspective, we kind of need the platforms to invest in this space because
Mhm.
they're the ones with the balance sheets to do it. It's just
Yeah.
there's just no getting around it.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a sort of a positive one as well. I think, like, we do want to see them, playing together. And we want to see those integrations, the integrations that are happening with the platforms and those technology partners as well. I think that's a really positive thing because again, we sort
Mm.
of haven't. There's a lot of problems with things like data feeds and all that sort of stuff that's happened in the past. Um, going into the advice CRMs and that sort of thing. So I think it's a really good thing, and I'd love to see this sort of continue to progress into the future because it just means we're going to get better data, better technology use, more efficiencies, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and like I love what CFS did with Edge. They've launched
Yeah.
a product with FNZ technology which has got integrations, and they've not only just taken those but built some for here locally for Australia. Integrating with Iris and actually My Prosperity, which was acquired by a competitor of theirs. But even then they're still doing it right. So I think that's a great example of that you can have a tech strategy. It doesn't have to be ownership of tech. You can be an integrator, and I think
Yeah.
be really great to see how CFS goes with that as a play.
Mhm.
But again on the screen here, just got a few other examples. Like in the UK, Intellify launched a joint platform offer with SS&C. So there you have an advice tech actually leading the platform sales story, which would be unimaginable here in Australia, I think, for
Yeah.
platforms to do it that way. But that's the way Intellify is going. And the US, for example, Schwab, one of the custody platforms there, have built integrations into Salesforce, which would be really fascinating. So I think this will keep happening. And despite what a lot of people think, we kind of need platforms to invest in this sector. They've got all the balance sheet, and I'm a hell of a lot happier with, frankly, the independent platforms controlling the balance sheet than I was when the banks were. So
Yeah.
because they're more innovative, they are more innovative. There's no
Yeah.
question about that. So this is great, and it was obviously all capped off by Hub acquiring My Prosperity, right?
Yeah, that was a good move. Hey?
Yeah, I mean, I think they got it cheap personally, 40 million. I mean, a lot of people thought they overpaid, but when you think about it, it basically bought them 10 years of development catch up footy in
Uh-huh.
one deal. And, Hub's share price will move $100 million on a day, depending on market movements. So, I
Yeah,
mean, they've probably paid for the acquisition well and truly many times over. So, yeah, good on them. Good on Hub and good on My Prosperity. See more action like that in this space.
that's a real synergy, isn't it? Having the platform, and then so a good quality client portal as well together in that offering. If you're a Hub
Yeah,
20, if you have 24 user and you want a client portal offering, I had to go. Yeah, I think
yeah.
that
And,
is
and Net
really
Wealth are doing, and not just Hub, like Net Wealth are investing
yeah,
heavily in portals, and they've built some really interesting portals and high quality UI. And yes, that's not just Hub; others will do it. But I guess My Prosperity had that unique factor that they'd already built so many of the other integrations into the accounting market, and that's particularly interesting to me. So, yeah, I think this area is going to hot up a lot. Yeah,
yeah, agreed. All right, prediction number 5, we had fewer foreign raiders. So since 2020, many of the international tech companies had struggled to establish a foothold in new markets. I think sort of underestimating that the local needs and what advisors expect out of their technology, and also just lacking that local presence, I think is probably really hindered that progress for the foreign companies coming over here. I think, as you said earlier, advisors are cautious at approaching and adopting new technology. They may have been burned
yeah,
before, and they're treading cautiously and staying safe potentially as well. So that's probably something else that's hurting these companies. I'm going to say that we got this one right as well. We have sort of seen a little bit of a slowdown there.
yeah. I mean, really, since Intelliflo, right? There hasn't really been
Mm.
a new player of substance, and we can't disclose the names. We've obviously had companies come to us and ask us to give them a bit of guidance on should they come to Australia and where are the gaps and all that opportunities. And to be honest, the minute we tell them the advisor number changes and dynamics in the market, they run off pretty quickly. So
Yeah.
I just think it's an addressable market issue, right? 10,000 advisors is just not enough to get a business excited when they can go and talk to 200,000 in the US or whatever the numbers are. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. All right. And our final prediction, prediction number 6, true AI use cases in advice emerge. So AI, we can't stop talking about it. It's everywhere. Everyone's talking about AI. So back then when we made this prediction, it was the release of ChatGPT 3 by OpenAI. We saw that as a critical moment for the practical AI application in the financial advice industry. Um, Signaling maybe, move from hype to actual practical application there. So we also said that advisors are expected to start using AI natively within Microsoft 365 in 2023 and 24. And I'm going to give us a tick here, because particularly around that second point around using AI natively with Microsoft 365. We've seen Copilot being released in this last part of 2023.
Yeah.
Advisors are really sort of starting to think about how they can use AI in their businesses. So I'm going to give us a tick for that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think you were bang on. I mean, I think we almost underestimated it, Danny, to an extent, right? I mean, how many queries do we get about it? It's unbelievable.
Mhm. Yeah,
I mean,
a
no one
lot.
wants to talk about data quality and cybersecurity and like everyone just want to
Boring
hit
stuff.
everything with the AI stick, right? And actually, I'll just share this for those playing at home. Your data here around, willingness to use AI. So this is not following a typical product adoption curve. So product adoption curves typically tell you that you have these sort of early adopters, the 5% of the market that sort of are happy to experiment with new technologies, idiots like me that buy fold phones really early to see if the tech works and give it a go. And it just takes time, right? Or electric cars or whatever the thing is, right? There's just people out there that want to have a crack. But this AI thing, that's throwing that on its head. I would say half of people, and your data absolutely enforces this, I think that they're prepared and ready to use AI.
Mm,
I can't think of another technology like it in that regard.
no. Yeah. And
Um,
I do you sort of think my version of prepared and your version of prepared might be different to what an advice businesses perception of prepared means. And, but that's because we look, overall at what's happening with the tech stack in an advice business. And I think for us, we're sort of looking at this, as more of a potential feature or, assistant or whatever you want to do, just to increase some small efficiencies around the things that you do day to day. But I personally don't think we're going to be throwing this into in front of our clients in a huge way. I may change my mind and might have to eat my words in a few months' time, depending on how quickly this goes. I'm prepared to do that. But I think we've got a lot of other things to focus on. We've got to get that boring foundational stuff right before
Yeah, well, I think I love that you've been the voice of reason about AI, Danny, for the whole year. Even when I've got a bit excited about it or carried away, you've been right. Because I think, I mean, even when we're experimenting with Copilot, right, Danny, it's a totally different way of working. You really have to change your behaviours, and I think, gee, it's pretty hard to get people to use new software, change how they do things right in a traditional sense. You throw AI in the mix, it's a completely different way of interacting with software. So. I think we're probably just, everyone's probably just excited by its possibility, and I think this element here around. So we've just got a bit of detail here for those watching the video on why people see AI as so attractive for an advice business, and it's all about back office efficiency and margins. So advice businesses I talk to are facing, the biggest issues they're facing are salary pressure in their back and middle offices. So high inflation environment, people asking for pay rises, war for talent, which is a challenge. A lot of businesses have probably relied on outsourcing to overseas, offshoring effectively to sort of bridge the gap there. But now that's not as cheap as it used to be. And equally, those costs have escalated because you're just throwing people at the problem, inefficient things. So you've got to think carefully about that. And so I think a lot of people are saying, well, here we are. Like, we really see incremental efficiency gains being the thing we're really shooting for here. So I think people will, but to get those, they're going to have to invest not just cash, but time to retrain staff.
Yeah. Because you've got to adjust your process, right? If this is going to fall part of your workflow, where are you going to put those efficiencies? Is it an implementation? Is it at the final review phase? You sort of have to have a really good strategic think about your process.
100%.
Right. I think we got a perfect score.
Played it too safe, Danny. Played it too safe.
Yeah.
We need to.
So,
I think we've got a bit harder on the predictions this year. So
yeah.
I'd like to get a few more wrong. So yeah, but it just goes to show sometimes that I think things with technology and macro cycles are pretty predictable. It's humans that are less predictable. So I think there's those elements that that interest me more around things like adoption of AI and what actually happens in reality. And I think you in the consulting capacity will have some awesome war stories this year, I think, on just what is happening with AI adoption. And we might have a few predictions about that this year that maybe the gloss might come off fairly quickly on some of this stuff.
Yeah. Agreed.
Anyway, good job.
Episode of the WealthTech Insider. If you would like, we'll pop a link to the report in our show notes and send you a copy of that. You can also do our technology health check. You can find that at www.finuragroup.com. And don't forget to look out for our part 2 of this podcast episode on our predictions, where we'll start to walk through our more risky 2024 predictions. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.